As we reimagine our future, we need to pay more attention to the power of infrastructure to deliver social resilience.
This sounds difficult, and it is. But as the examples from this film show,
it can be done. Thank you very much for joining us for the second of the video series on Infrastructure for Good, Motoko.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
I'd like to start by asking you, why is it important to understand the social outcomes of infrastructure?
I am absolutely passionate about the power of infrastructure delivering resilience. Most of the time, that's understood to mean the resilience of physical assets to make sure they can withstand extreme climate events and natural disasters like floods and fires. But there's another aspect. Infrastructure can deliver social resilience, and this can be done through enabling accessibility, affordability, and quality of services for everybody, and especially those people who are vulnerable, poor, and marginalized, because by strengthening them, the society can withstand future shocks and crises, like climate crisis, like financial crisis, and possibly another pandemic crisis.
And one of the things that we saw after the pandemic in particular, but even before, was that urban planners have been thinking much more deliberately about social outcomes of different projects. What are some of these examples of urban projects that have yielded outcomes like inclusivity, accessibility, and empowerment?
Yes, there are actually many examples from different sectors of infrastructure projects. So let me take transport as an example. And I like to use Brazil to illustrate the point that you can be very deliberate in creating accessibility for people with mobility challenges. Brazil has done this pretty systematically across the country, and to the point I was delighted to see recently in a project document for São Paulo inner city railway project that they had a specific requirement to build in accommodation for people with mobility needs.
Another aspect that we would like to consider as part of social benefits is empowerment. So when transport systems and projects capture women's needs, whether it's access to markets or access to childcare and other caregiving services, that those are also explicitly spelled out in project plans.
So that's absolutely right. And another example is the Gautrain project in South Africa, which connects Pretoria to Johannesburg. But the designers of the project also wanted to connect various townships to that railway system so that people have access to public transportation system as a way to reverse past discrimination under the apartheid regime.
Now, if we shift gears and talk a little bit about more of the ecosystem, we're creating a barometer as part of the Infrastructure for Good initiative, where we look at the infrastructure ecosystem across 30 countries, focusing on their policy environments and, of course, other mechanisms that enable this for good in infrastructure to happen across the board. How could we effect systemic change and incorporate social benefit as part of that?
I was delighted to come across Infrastructure Victoria's 30-year infrastructure strategy. Victoria is a state within Australia. What they have done is to project the needs of the population over a period of 30 years to take into account the aging population, the need for people to have outdoor recreation, the need for vulnerable people to have better housing, and so on and so forth. So they actually started with the needs assessment as opposed to specific infrastructure assets. And where they ended up with is this blueprint over a long period of time, not necessarily focusing on specific infrastructure projects, but to think about the whole system of infrastructure and how to refurbish what they have and use it better, and to add over that new infrastructure assets. And the amazing thing is that people absolutely own this thing because they were consulted very thoroughly. So how did they make this work? They planned this deliberately. They approached this in a multidisciplinary way. They understood that the cost up front will be thinned out over a period of time so that they can afford it. And they based this on a very thorough consultation plan across the state. The world needs so much infrastructure. These examples tell you it can be done, and we still have a chance to get this right.